Chapter 516, The Hanged Man's Guess. Amidst his shock, another doubt surfaced in Alger's mind.
If Mr. Fool had foreseen this, why did he mention that Banzi Harbor's matter is related to Rose's redemption and the King of Angels, Medici? Did he tell us on purpose? He hopes to spread this matter through us? The target is the King of Angels, Medici? No, it's more likely to be the true creator. Mr. Fool has repeatedly thwarted the plans of the true creator before, so it should be no exception this time. The term Rose's redemption appeared in the abandoned temple of the true creator, and it's established by the King of Angels, Medici, and Ouroboros. Clearly, they share a deep connection with the true creator. Banzi Harbor only has our Church of Storms, so the person Mr. Fool is really informing is actually me?
Alger vaguely understood something. Then he became acutely aware of another problem.
The last time the world mentioned that something major was about to happen in Backland, it was immediately confirmed by Mr. Fool, and it later involved the awakening of the primordial demoness and the descent of the true creator. This time, the abnormality at Banzi Harbor also received a response from Mr. Fool. He revealed the secret hidden in ancient Benzi and has brought the Rose Redemption and the King of Angels to the forefront of all the members of the Tarot Club. Isn't this too coincidental? With Surah. Yes, news provided by the world previously had to do with Backland, and this is the first time it involves the sea. Furthermore, Mr. Fool had mentioned last week that his blessed has been forced to leave Backland because of the great smog. They match perfectly. So the world is actually Mr. Fool's blessed? No, he should be a representative among all his blessed in the Tarot Club. He's to do things that Mr. Fool finds inconvenient. Of course, through this gathering, the blessed will also trade goods and knowledge in order to advance himself. This is also considered a form of Mr. Fool's nurturing of him. On careful thought, this theory is probably correct. At least, the world has never collected Roselle's diary in exchange for knowledge or intelligence from Mr. Fool. As his blessed, it's his duty, so he has probably submitted them in private. From this conclusion, some deliberate questions or contradictions on the world's part are meant to conceal his identity as a blessed. This is consistent with his experienced, skilled, and cunning character. In addition to the hidden attempt to awaken as he slowly lifts the seal, Mr. Fool holds the tarot gathering to also use us to interfere in certain events. This is evident from the composition of the members: a high noble, a beyonder at the bishop level of the church, a survivor of the forsaken land of God, a student of the Abraham family, an adult vampire. Each of us represents a faction or a particular circle or resource channel.
Many thoughts flashed through Alger's mind. Not only was he not repressed by his own guesses, but he was also excited. To him, Mr. Fool's unknown purpose was the most frightening thing. Having an initial understanding of what he wanted to do allowed him to effectively avoid any risks and improve himself by doing so.
As long as the Fool wants to use us to do things, he'll definitely give us some benefits. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Otherwise, I don't know when I'll be able to see the hope of becoming a demigod. The world, you definitely didn't expect that I would see through your disguise.
Alger's fear subsided, and he began to think about how to use the information about Banzi Harbor. He couldn't report the matter just like that, as it would arouse suspicion, and he had to patiently wait for an opportunity to let the higher-ups appreciate him and reward him, without ending up being monitored. Audrey could tell that Mr. Hangman was undergoing a mental exercise, but she didn't expect him to come up with so many guesses in such a short period of time. And from the words of Mr. Fool, she was delighted to learn that Rose Redemption was a secret organization established by a number of kings of angels, which was also related to the true creator. At the same time, she vaguely sensed the strangeness of the world. She realized that this member of the organization, who was the most difficult to read, was always involved in important matters and could always obtain important information. Furthermore, he constantly produced formulas, ingredients, and beyonder characteristics, as if he could successfully hunt down a beyonder within 1 to 2 weeks.
He left Backland and went to sea? Or was it a rumor he heard in Backland? Should I tell this information to the church? Well, Mr. Hanged Man has a close relationship with the Church of Storms, so it's better for him to do it, and there wouldn't be any problems.
Audrey suppressed the thought of probing and only curiously asked,
Honorable Mr. Fool, what's the title of the King of Angels, Medici? Or should I say, what is his pathway?
Klein leaned back into his chair and said with a deep chuckle,
Red Priest.
Red Priest? Which pathway is that? It sounds very similar to the Black Emperor. Could it be that it's another Sequence Zero title?
Audrey thought with excitement and joy. Derek silently muttered the words, realizing that there was no corresponding record in the City of Silver's history.
Perhaps I haven't read enough, having only received a general education.
He thought regretfully. Fours and Emlyn listened as if they were listening to a story and were equally interested in similar information.
The only problem is that I can't brag about it or write it into my novels.
Fours felt a pang of regret.
Mr. Hanged Man will likely report it to his superiors. Let's hope he doesn't delay it for too long. With his shrewdness, he may have already figured out some of the problems regarding the world, and has grasped the relationship between him and the Fool. Fortunately, I've deliberately set up the world to be Sherlock Moriarty since a long time ago, giving him the identity of a blessed. Mr. Hanged Man can at best detect it up to this point, unable to imagine that the world is actually a dummy.
Klein raised his hand to his chin, smiled, and said,
Continue.
Seeing that Mr. Fool was no longer talking about the subject, Emlyn, who had freed himself from his emotions as a messiah, began to face the difficult problems of reality. That was his lack of money. Regardless, he had never considered selling off his dolls. He only told himself that he needed to be frugal in the future. Only after half a year or even a year could he get himself a new doll, or he could buy a new set of clothes for the dolls he already had. In addition, the only way he could think of making money was to sell some potions that had a miraculous effect, but that could easily bring hidden danger to his clansmen in Backland.
This is an arrangement by the ancestor. Logically speaking, Lord Nibs should provide me help, but Mr. Fool wishes for me to keep it a secret, to be the messiah in the shadows who's burdened with responsibility. I'm not to reveal it on my own accord.
After thinking for a few seconds, Emlyn pumped himself up, cleared his throat, and said,
Everyone, I have a question. Here's the matter. Suppose there's a powerhouse who has arranged for you to investigate something. Although you have successfully obtained the information, you are unable to report it to the person due to certain reasons. Then how can you continue to get support from this powerhouse?
Having said this, Emlyn suddenly felt that this act was somewhat shameful.
This makes me appear like a traitor and a spy. No, I'm doing this for the sake of the Sanguine's continuation. For this, I have to give up my reputation and bear the burden of being misunderstood. When this is over, and when the truth is revealed, they'll be moved by me.
Emlyn quickly eased his prior feelings. At this moment, Audrey, Fours, and Derek cast their eyes towards Alger. In their eyes, Mr. Hanged Man was the most experienced and the best teacher in this field. Klein also thought so too. Alger glanced at the moon and chuckled.
It's simple, but you have to take some risks.
Emlyn subconsciously denied.
It's not me.
The Hanged Man replied with a chuckle.
Let's assume that it's you.
He continued his description.
You will slowly display a certain level of abnormalities in your daily life, allowing that powerhouse to see that you have a problem. He will have two choices. One is to interrogate you directly, but it will be very easy to end up losing a lead for clues. The second is to inadvertently provide you with help so that you can investigate more thoroughly and then send people to monitor you. I think the second possibility is the most likely. The risk you have to take is how to not reveal the information you want to hide while under surveillance.
That works? In fact, I won't be exposed either. Every tarot gathering, I'll be resting in the Harvest Church, looking normal on the outside. As for the sacrifice of items and the receiving of bestowments, they're things that can be shown to Lord Nibs and the others. It will allow them to guess that I have formed some sort of connection with Mr. Fool, but they can't imagine that I've already joined a secret gathering. Very well. While I'm studying history, I'll take the initiative to ask Baron Waymondy about the City of Silver.
Emlyn's eyes lit up as he had an idea. He then thought of something and turned to the Hanged Man.
Last week, didn't you ask about a way to make everyone on board a ship sleep at the same time? It's very simple. I can provide you with a magical anesthetic gas that can effectively spread without any irritating smells. Even on the deck, one will fall unconscious once they catch a whiff of it. Of course, it's best if you choose a windless night, and that the targets are unable to sense danger, and their physiques cannot be too strong. Those beyonders that are well known for their physiques in Sequence 9 are the limit. It can cause deep slumber that lasts for more than 3 hours. The effects will constantly decline after that. 100 pounds a can, and an extra 30 pounds for me.
The hangman thought about the situation of the sailors on the ghost ship and didn't haggle.
Okay.
He wanted to erect a certain image in front of the moon to prepare for the big transaction that would follow. He had thought of using a slumber charm, but that would require him to chant the incantation. It would make the sailors notice that something was wrong and suspect something afterward. At the end of the exchange, Klein tapped the surface of the long, mottled table with his finger, and he said with a leisurely smile,
I can foresee that everyone will present a new appearance of themselves next week. Let us end today's gathering here.
Thank you for your blessings.
Audrey was the first to stand up. She took her leave, expressing her gratitude. With Mr. Fool saying those words, she felt more confident in consuming the psychiatrist's potion. As the magician and the others repeated the same words, one figure after another disappeared from the palace. The area above the gray fog returned to its eternal silence. Chapter 517, City of Generosity, Backland, Chairwood Borough. As the crimson glow faded from her eyes, Fours saw the familiar desk and open notebook which she used to jot down her inspirations. To her, this experience was no longer anything new, but it still evoked reverence from the bottom of her heart. This was a power that did not belong to humans, something that even demigods were incapable of. Fours felt like she was one step closer to ridding herself from the curse of the full moon.
I will receive the stomach pouch of a spirit eater in 2 days. My apprentice potion has already been digested. Finally, I will become a trickmaster. I wonder what beyonder powers I will receive. By advancing by my own abilities, teacher will definitely place greater importance on me. Apart from potion formulas in the future, perhaps I might be provided with some beyonder ingredients. How I look forward to that very much. I do not even know the corresponding names of Sequence 6 and 5. I only know that Sequence 7 is astrologer. After I become a trickmaster, I will immediately write to teacher.
At this moment, she heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching. Finally, it turned into the slam of the door. Fours sighed silently.
Shio is out again. She is so busy. If not for the 400 pounds debt that she owes Viscount Glaint, we would probably be vacationing at Desi Bay now.
After a long period of hard work, and thanks to the enhancement of her strength, certain tasks that were previously impossible for her to complete have become simple. Moreover, from time to time, Shio would receive small tasks that pay well from the Golden Masked Man. Shio has already raised her savings from 110 pounds to 320 pounds, leaving her with only 80 pounds left to pay off her debt. Fours withdrew her thoughts and thought about the matter Mr. World had entrusted her.
In fact, I could spot her 80 pounds, but unfortunately, although she is not tall, she still has a lot of pride in her.
As a doctor and a writer, she did not know much about radios or anything about the entire field of machinery. She did not usually pay attention to such information when reading the newspapers, so she did not know where she could buy the kind of transceiver the world wanted.
A department store? It probably does not sell one. Ah, right, Aviel writes science fiction, so he should know a lot about such matters.
Fours quickly found the right person to consult. However, she immediately had a new problem. Was she to visit him directly, or was she to write him a letter of inquiry? Glancing at the chair covered in a thick, soft blanket, and smelling the fragrance of coffee and tobacco emanating the room, she felt a warmth slowly creeping through her body. Bit by bit, her motivation to leave the house crumbled.
I am not familiar with him, so I should not rashly pay him a visit.
She sat down with a grunt and unfolded a piece of paper. In the Berg household in the City of Silver, Derek opened his eyes and woke up from feigning sleep. According to his original plan, he would have immediately held a sacrificial ritual to send out the stomach pouch of the spirit eater. However, the words of the hanged man reminded him to be more cautious and make more observations. Derek remained silent for a few seconds, then he attached his axe of hurricane to his body and headed for the steeple.
I will gather the ingredients Mr. Hangman require first, and then I will do the sacrificial ritual all at once.
He first checked the items available for exchanging using merit points, but he was not in a hurry to complete the transaction. He planned to go to the underground market to take a look once the lightning in the sky subsided. Derek went up to the third floor and headed straight for the library section that dealt with mythology and ancient classics, hungering for valuable information he had not learned yet. Suddenly, he saw a hard and yellowed book with a cover, Giant King's Court, Book of Blackrock, hand-copied edition. Derek reached for the book, pulled it out, and saw that it was bound in a brown monster hide.
It is a record passed down from the Giant King's Court? I wonder if there is anything related to the Kings of Angels.
At that moment, on the upper level of the library, Colin Iliad was wearing a flaxen-colored linen shirt and a brown coat, and standing there quietly, looking down. His unkempt, grizzled hair flailed in the breeze from the window, and his pale blue eyes were deep and reserved. Wednesday, 12 January, 5:40 p.m. The sky was dark and cloudy, with deep blue waves undulating across the sea. The white agate bobbed up and down in this storm, like a toy in the palm of a giant. Danitz stood by the window and enjoyed the scenery outside.
This is the sea. No matter how powerful one is, one will appear insignificant in front of it. Fortunately, we are almost at the city of generosity.
From the moment they left Banzi Harbor, the White Agate's journey had been smooth sailing. With the help of the wind, it reached a stable speed of 15 knots. Hence, even though they arrived at Tiana Port a little later than scheduled, they completed the entire journey half a day earlier. That is to say, the White Agate, which was scheduled to arrive at the City of Generosity on the morning of the 13th, arrived on the evening of the 12th. Hearing Dunitz's reflections, Klein just glanced up at him, then looked away and continued his contemplation. The more he played the part of Gehrman Sparrow, and the more he had to force himself to behave in accordance with his persona, the more deeply he realized what kind of person he was. When faced with different situations, he realized that the choices he really wanted to make were different from Gehrman Sparrow's. For example, he would have responded to Danitz by idly chatting with him about the weather at sea and the disasters caused by those terrible storms. But Gehrman Sparrow would not. He had to be cold and reserved. Klein sighed inwardly.
The more there are such differences, the more I recognize myself.
This was something he had not experienced when he moved about with his identity as the private detective, Sherlock Moriarty. Back then, he did not have to disguise his personality and had just been himself. Klein thought, summing things up as he engaged in self-deprecation.
I feel like I have digested my potion a little. However, Gehrman Sparrow has traits that are similar to myself. At the very least, when choosing to disembark and entering Banzi Harbor to save the others, I overlapped with this identity of mine, and there was no difference. Of course, it could also be said that I was adding a certain kind of persona into the mix. Beneath Gehrman Sparrow's gentleness and madness, he has a kind, brave, and compassionate heart that values relationships. Heh, I cannot boast about myself. If I had known earlier that Banzi was Benzi, I would have most likely been terrified. Not necessarily. At the very least, the danger which was divined was within an acceptable range.
This made him more aware of a problem. Although playing the role of a purely fictional person could help him digest the potion, he needed to replace an existing identity to speed up and improve his progress. He needed to gain the affirmation of people from the other person's interpersonal relationships, feel the corresponding emotions of joy, anger, sadness, and immersing himself in them, but not getting obsessed. Klein looked at the pale yellow carpet, his mind racing.
Become anyone, but ultimately become yourself in the end? And get feedback from the people involved?
Seeing Gehrman Sparrow without a response, Danitz spread his hands helplessly, feeling bored out of his mind. Danitz felt that he would sooner or later develop a habit of talking to himself when faced with a similar silence.
This crazy guy is good in every way other than making me do what servants do. There is only one thing: he does not like to talk. There is a communication barrier with him. If this goes on, I will definitely go crazy. Fortunately, I am finally at Bayham. I can finally be free.
After a while, he saw Gehrman Sparrow look up, smile, and say,
You can tell me about the pirate point of contacts in Bayam.
Danitz's expression twisted.
Dog shit, it is better if you do not say anything.
Whoosh! At 6:15 p.m., just before the storm arrived, the White Agate docked smoothly and arrived at the capital of the Rorstead archipelago, Bayam, the city of generosity. It was also known as the Spice Archipelago, and it was home to a variety of exotic spices, with the plantations of these produce being mainstays of the economy. The Blue Mountain Island, where Bayam was located, occupied more than half of the archipelago, which was mostly covered in forest. It had gold, silver, copper, coal, iron, and other minerals, as well as a plentiful variety of fruits due to the particularly fertile land. For these reasons, the first batch of colonists named the seaside city they built the City of Generosity. They believed it was a land of treasure promised by the gods, where it flowed with milk and honey. Klein picked up his suitcase, which Danitz packed, and he left room 312, entering the corridor that led to the deck. Without any surprises, he met Donna's family, Cleves, and others. The two siblings were still a little afraid of Klein after the fright he gave them. They hid behind their parents and bodyguards and did not dare to speak, appearing like deflated balloons. Klein nodded slightly as a form of greeting. At this moment, Branch hesitated for a second and then took a half-step forward.
Mr. Sparrow, will you be staying in Bayham? If I wish to hire, request for your help, how can I contact you?
Klein thought for a moment.
He is indeed a businessman with a spirit of adventure. Even if he is afraid, he still wishes to befriend someone with beyonder powers. What newspapers are in circulation over here?
Said without any thought.
The Sonia Morning Post and the News Report are popular in the archipelago.
Klein was careful to give a one-way method of contact.
Put an advertisement in the Sonia Morning Post for 3 days in a row asking to buy Demir's special cured meat, and leave an address. I will go look for you, and if I do not show up 3 days later, it means I am at sea again.
Exhaled and smiled.
All right.
Cleves and the others expressed their gratitude once again and left the cabin in an orderly manner. Noticing the gangway in sight, Donna suddenly slowed her pace and stepped back next to Klein, raised her face and bit her lip.
Uncle Sparrow, since that kind of power definitely brings about threats and madness, why did you choose to have it?
She had thought about this question for a long time before finally mustering the courage to ask. Klein was startled, and he instinctively formed a smile.
For my dream.
Then he lowered his voice and said 2 words.
And protect.
Protect.
Donna mumbled the word in a slightly lost voice, picked up her pace, and caught up with her parents. After watching the Branch family leave the White Agate, Klein retracted his gaze and said to Danitz,
You are free.
Ah?
For a moment, Danitz was not used to it. Chapter 518, On the Brink of Death. Without another word or care for Danitz, Klein pressed his top hat and carried his suitcase down the gangway.
Are you really going to let me go?
Blazing Danitz stood on the deck, his face filled with suspicion. Although he had expected such an outcome, with Gehrman Sparrow directly letting him go while in Demir Harbor, making him capable of imagining today's scene, he still couldn't believe it. He felt that everything that befell him came too simply and easily.
Regardless, I'm worth 3,000 pounds. No, this is the bounty offered only by Lowen. Isn't this madman Gehrman Sparrow an adventurer? How can he let go of a huge amount of wealth in front of him? It's incomprehensible. Heh, it's true that normal people can't understand the mindset of lunatics.
Danitz gradually snapped back to his senses. With his luggage in hand, he carefully descended the gangway and stepped onto the concrete ground of the dock. He straightened his back, lifted his head, and gave Gehrman Sparrow's back a glance. He realized that he really wasn't turning back and was following the path straight for Coastal Street. Danitz didn't dare delay a second longer. He immediately turned around and left through another path, occasionally changing directions and using obstacles to look back, in order to ensure that he wasn't followed. Soon, he arrived at a row of houses near the warehouse at the dock.
Gehrman Sparrow really didn't use me as bait.
After triple-checking, Danitz finally relaxed completely. At this moment, he finally felt like he was liberated. A dignified bosun of a pirate admiral like him no longer had to be bullied and be ordered around like a servant.
I can already foresee that tomorrow will be incomparably beautiful. There will be a group of people vying to flatter me, wanting to become my servants.
Danitz knocked happily on the door, 3 long and 3 short, rhythmically.
Gehrman Sparrow asked me to give him the pirate point of contacts in Bayam. I obviously only told him the ones that don't have a good relationship with us. There's no way he could guess that our Golden Dream point of contact is right at the dock.
Danitz picked at his nose and breathed in the fresh sea breeze before a looming rain. Bayam was a pivotal location of the Loan Kingdom's central Sonia Sea colonies. It was one of the largest cities in the region. There were many powerful official beyonders, and no matter how rampant the pirates were, they didn't dare to openly show their faces here. Most of the time, they had to rely on the local gangs or people with backgrounds to handle the loot and purchase any necessities. Of course, this didn't mean that they wouldn't come to Bayam. The Red Theater here was the most famous brothel in the surrounding seas, and countless pirates came to patronize this famous place. Even if 1 or 2 of their peers were caught every once in a while, it didn't stop them from rushing over. In addition to the spice trade, the brothel industry was another major pillar of the Rorstead archipelago. Apart from the Red Theater, there were many big or small brothels, out in the open or hidden all over the place. They fully satisfied the desires of the seamen with ample energy. As for the female pirates, they didn't have to worry about this problem. As long as they were willing, they could always be satisfied. After all, there was more demand than supply. At sea, where faith in the Lord of Storms was mainstream, there had always been few females. Similarly, the underground trade related to beyonder ingredients and mysticism was quite frequent here, and there were many circles.
Those smaller ports are still better. We don't have to be afraid of being discovered at all. And we can just openly sit in a bar, engage in disputes with adventurers, and even fight them. As long as we don't cause any trouble or cause any deaths, the local official beyonders will turn a blind eye. With their strength, they typically have to take on tremendous risks if they wish to interfere.
Danitz thought mockingly. At that moment, he heard footsteps and saw the door creak open. A familiar face entered his sight.
Old man, did you not drink today?
Danitz smiled and greeted. Standing at the door was one of the Golden Dream's contacts in the Rorstead archipelago, Old Rin. Old Rin coughed twice and made way. Danitz stepped into the dim room, his nose twitching suddenly. He caught a whiff of Lanty-proof.
No, Old Rin likes to drink locally produced Bayam Black Rand.
As this thought flashed through his mind, Danitz was terrified. Immediately following that, he saw a man with his back to him rise to his feet. He was tall, dark, and muscular, and his hair was curled like marbles.
Klein Moretti.
Danitz's pupils contracted sharply. This was the second mate of the Admiral of Blood, a great pirate with a bounty of 6,000 pounds. Waves of the sea breeze blew, swaying the thin, sharp leaves of the tree in a precarious manner. Klein was walking along Coastal Street at an adequate speed. In contrast, the people around him were hurrying and walking quickly. His spiritual intuition told him that it would take some time before the storm would arrive, and that he had plenty of time to find a hotel. Whoosh! The sound of the wind grew louder and louder. Tree branches fell to the ground, and there weren't many people left on the street. Klein was about to turn into another alley when he heard the sound of hasty but disorderly running. Tap, 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 tap! Danitz was running with all his might, but the scene in front of him began to rock. He felt an abnormal pain from his wound as he felt his vitality rapidly sapping away. His spirit body had partially left his body, approaching the legendary underworld. As for the surrounding sounds, he could only vaguely hear them, and everything in his line of sight looked like it wasn't real. If it wasn't for having Shadow Cloak, the ambush would have killed him. But even so, he was still severely injured and could die on the streets at any moment. He was forced to run towards Coastal Street because of his will to warn the captain that their point of contact had been compromised by the Admiral of Blood, as well as the glimmer of hope brought by that crazy but powerful figure.
If it's him, then he would definitely be able to escape from the hands of Steel Movetti's henchmen.
Danitz began to stagger, and his body gradually grew cold. Just as he was about to collapse, he saw Gehrman Sparrow standing by a street corner. His refined face that hid madness appeared so genial at that moment. Plop! Danitz fell on his back, his hands hanging limply over his chest, revealing a hideous, exaggerated wound that was inflicted to his organs.
Tell Captain that old Rin has been discovered. Steel Movetti did it for that treasure.
Danitz saw Gehrman Sparrow kneel to his side as he hurriedly spoke. Klein recalled the bounty offered for Steel Movetti and asked in return.
Admiral of Blood?
Yes, tell Captain. Tell Captain.
Danitz gasped as he said. After saying all that, he revealed a mournful smile.
Don't worry about me. I'm about to die soon. Tell the captain that all the money I've saved up has been turned into real estate. Units 12 to 16 on Byam's Amiris Avenue. The title deeds are hidden in the wall of Unit 13's basement. Help me sell them. Take the money to South Intiz's Elima town. Give the money to my parents. Say that I've really made a fortune.
Danitz paused. Then he said with great difficulty,
Say that I've become an outstanding adventurer. Leisol, also, help me say I'm sorry.
His eyes suddenly became moist, as if he was recalling that rebellious youth from back then.
I'm sorry, old man mother. I'm unable to return home.
Danitz's vision darkened, and he felt that his life was coming to an end. It was at this moment that he saw Gehrman Sparrow reach out and press his hand to his wound and then swipe it. Danitz's sorrow came to a sudden halt as he felt the already numb pain in his chest and abdomen suddenly disappear as his left hand seemed to suffer a fracture. He looked at Klein blankly, and Klein looked back at him quietly. None of them spoke for 2 seconds. Finally, he looked down in astonishment and discovered that his lethal wound had strangely healed. His left arm was badly mutilated, and even his bones protruded out.
I'm fine now?
Danitz blinked, still immersed in the sadness and frustration of his brush with death.
Why didn't you treat me first?
He asked blankly. Klein looked back at the empty area on the other side of Coastal Street and said in a calm tone,
Waiting for you to finish. It's basic courtesy.
Courtesy, you son of a b sums tch. I was really saying my last words.
With a sudden jerk of his back, Danitz rolled to his feet. He warily looked towards the dock, where a thick cloud of smoke was rising. It was none other than the result of the battle he had just been engaged in.
Because the house was set on fire by me, Steel Movetti was afraid that it would catch the attention of the official Beyonders. As he was confused by that shadow, he didn't chase after me.
Danitz instantly understood the sequence of events.
Let's find a place to stay first.
Klein spread his hands and caught a drop of rain. Not knowing whether or not he had completely escaped danger, Danitz immediately nodded.
Noter. Okay. I can tell that this madman, Gehrman Sparrow, isn't afraid of Steel Movetti at all. He's not even afraid of Admiral of Blood. At such times, I especially admire his craziness. Damn, I exposed my wealth to him.
Danitz had just exhaled when his body froze. Klein walked silently ahead with his suitcase and cane, with only one thought echoing in his head.
God damn it, a pirate is richer than I am.
Empress Burrow. Audrey, who was about to leave Backland, hid in her chemistry laboratory and concocted the psychiatrist potion with the ingredients she received from Mr. Vampire, the fruit of the Tree of Elders, the blood of a mirror dragon, and the other ingredients she had collected previously. This time, she didn't get Susie to guard the door. Instead, she was to sit inside and observe the whole process from the sidelines. Earl Hall had already instructed everyone to not approach the young lady during her experiments, but they had to pay attention to any unusual changes. Phew. Audrey let out a small sigh of relief, pouring the completed potion into a prepared glass bottle. The slightly golden liquid rippled like a deformed, gigantic pupil. Its gaze seemed to shine right into the eyes of anyone's heart.
Susie, did you remember the process? You are a mature... No. You are a mature beyonder. In the future, you'll have to learn how to concoct your own potion. No, it's not that I'm not helping you. It's just that I'm pointing out a possibility. Sometimes I might not be by your side, and you just happen to need a potion bottle.
Audrey said happily to the huge golden retriever.
Woof.
Susie was so confused by what she was taught, and she could only open her mouth to reply with a single word. Converging her emotions, Audrey raised her head and downed the psychiatrist's potion bottle. Chapter 519. Naming. The golden liquid was cool and refreshing, making Audrey feel as if she was enjoying a delicious ice cream. She then took a sip of champagne. Tiny bubbles of air continuously rose, silently bursting as they brought a tingling sensation with them. Suddenly her sense of hearing reached out, and she could hear the conversation of the two maids at the end of the corridor as they lamented at how they had no chance of going to the Hall family's castle and manor in Eastchester County. At this moment, Audrey felt as if she had dissolved into an illusory gas and was rapidly expanding. It filled the entire room, overlapping with the sea formed from everyone's sea of consciousness. Her vision also changed. Everything she saw was abnormally smooth, turning into a mirror that reflected her current appearance. Possessing a beauty described by pure, exquisite, grand, and witty golden scales that were slowly growing out of her exposed skin, her emerald green irises contracted and were dyed in a faint golden color, as if they had turned vertical. Audrey suddenly felt fear from the bottom of her heart when she saw herself like this. She didn't want or wish to become an inhuman monster. With a hum, her mind began to turn into a blur, as if something was slowly and painfully drilling out from the surface of her body. Just then, she heard the gentle voice of her huge golden retriever, Susie.
Don't be afraid, calm down. Don't be afraid, calm down.
Audrey recovered her thoughts and tried to get herself into a spectator state. Her undulating emotions quickly calmed down and her spirit seemed to leave her body. She then looked down at herself like a spectator. Audrey saw the golden scales on the surface of her body visibly recede and her emerald-like eyes return to normal. It didn't take her long to regain control of her body and understand what beyonder powers were available to a psychiatrist and how they were used.
It was so dangerous just now.
Audrey raised her hand in fear. Her skin was fair and delicate, completely unlike the abnormal condition she had been in a moment ago. After this incident, she truly understood how terrifying the danger of losing control which Mr. Fool would occasionally bring up was. She gained a deep understanding of how difficult it was to go down the Beyonder path. Even with the acting method, it was impossible to completely remove the latent risks. At one gathering, Mr. World said that Beyonders are a bunch of miserable wretches that are constantly fighting against threats and madness.
Previously, I could only understand it literally. Now I can finally feel the weight behind this sentence. Audrey, don't be discouraged, don't be afraid. Father, mother, and brother are still waiting for your protection. With this experience, you won't be frightened by yourself in the future or so easily lose control. You can do it.
Audrey clenched her fists and encouraged herself. She calmed down for 2 seconds, walked up to Susie, squatted down, and hugged the golden retriever. As she combed its fur, she put her head against the side of the dog's face and muttered in its warmth.
Thank you, thank you.
Susie rubbed against her twice and asked seriously,
Audrey, is this how a psychiatrist feels like? Men. I like it very much.
Audrey was suddenly at a loss on whether to laugh or cry. She immediately pursed her lips and promised,
Susie, will treat each other in the future. Yes, psychological problems.
Okay, woof.
Susie answered happily. It was only now, with Audrey truly recovering, that she was in the mood to examine her own advancement.
My body seems to have become healthier. Although I don't have any obvious muscles, my strength and speed have become much stronger than before. My eyesight has also improved. I can even clearly see items hidden in the dark. My sense of smell is able to distinguish even more subtle smells, and thus being able to grasp a target's truest emotions and thoughts. I finally have Beyonder powers in the truest sense of the word. Yes, there's also awe. I can target one person or apply it to a group of people within a certain range. They'll instantly panic and turn chaotic as though they're facing a dragon. Higem others frenzy. It will trigger the emotions and mental state of a target, throwing the target into a frenzy. They'll suffer intense psychological damage and might even cause direct loss of control at times. Another is psychological cue. Through specific methods, words, and a medium, I can cue a target, letting them abide by my arrangements without them realizing it. Or they might strongly abide by a particular promise from the bottom of their hearts. Another is placate, also known as psychoanalysis. I can help Beyonders on the brink of losing control to regain their reason and escape danger. There's a certain chance of failure. The higher my sequence, the more easily it will succeed. It can calm down various psychological instabilities and allow for communication. Another is telepathy. Through mediums like candlelight and extracts, it will put the target in a partially hypnotic state. I'll then be able to directly communicate with their body of heart and mind, just like what Hilbert Alucard did to me. If not for the protection provided by Mr. Fool's angel, then I wouldn't have the means to lie under such situations. Yes, I have to be on guard against such techniques. I can't be fooled by a target, and there should be quite a number of means to achieve this effect. With placate and telepathy, together with certain psychology knowledge, I'll be able to act as a true psychiatrist, the kind that can open a clinic.
Audrey's mood rapidly improved. She finally had the feeling that she had matured and become a qualified Beyonder.
I'm a mid-sequence Beyonder. There really is a qualitative change.
She stood up, lifted her skirt, and walked briskly around in a circle. She quickly discovered that she was still lacking in direct defensive abilities as a psychiatrist.
Fortunately, I have this.
Audrey stopped in front of the experiment table and opened a plain brown box. Inside the box was a silver mask that could only cover half a face. It was the mystical item that the hanged man had sold her. Audrey picked it up, placed it in her palm, and observed it for a few seconds. Then she extended her spirituality and projected her thoughts, just like how she did above the gray fog. She saw the silver mask begin to warp inwards, turning into a hollow, finely patterned, slightly large earring.
It might be better to turn it into a necklace,
Audrey whispered. Afterward, she tried out the various abilities of this magical item. She was most satisfied with her ability to fine-tune her appearance.
It's a pity that other than flame controlling, it doesn't have any other more direct offensive powers. Perhaps I'll need to prepare a revolver, one that has Beyonder effects.
Audrey thought with some regret. She quickly collected her emotions and said to the mystical item in her hand with an uplifted tone towards the end.
From today, your name is Lie. The most beautiful lie.
City of Generosity, Bayam, 48 Acid Lemon Street, Wind of Azure Inn. It was raining heavily outside and the wind was raging, but inside the luxurious suite the fireplace was warm and the environment peaceful. Klein sat in his chair and watched silently as Blazing Danitz dealt with the severe fracture on his left arm. He waited until Danitz was finished binding up his arm with shredded old clothes before asking bluntly,
What treasure?
According to Danitz, it was because of some treasure that Admiral of Blood Seigneur wanted to deal with Vice Admiral Edwina Edwards. The sound of wind and rain came through the window. Danitz took a sip of the Lanti-proof on the table and then gave a bitter, angry laugh.
Those asterisk holes who had their brains eaten by zombies. On our last expedition, we found a sunken ship. Although we didn't find anything of great value, we discovered a gigantic black iron key that doesn't look like the kind used by humans. Can you imagine? After being submerged under the sea for so many years, it hasn't rusted at all.
Yes.
Klein replied in a concise manner. In a world where extraordinariness and mystery intertwined, what wasn't possible? There were people who could be resurrected from the dead, not to mention others. Danitz choked and paused for 7 or 8 seconds before he knew what to say next.
Perhaps there's a traitor among us, and the news has spread. Countless pirates believe that this is Death's key, a key that can open the treasure trove Death left behind. I thought that this problem would be cleared up very quickly and happily applied for a vacation. In the end, the matter became more complicated. Even Admiral of Blood has joined the ranks of these mad pirates. I'm even beginning to suspect that it's Death's key, a key that can turn one into a true god.
Foolish.
Klein calmly gave his evaluation. Whether it was in the divination domain or dealing with deities, he could be considered experienced. Thus, he had his own understanding and confidence in the interpretation of Death's key. He believed that the key was a form of revelation, a symbol. The thing that opened Death's treasure trove was probably not in the shape of a key, but some kind of characteristic, bloodline, or even certain specified people and their descendants. Danitz was startled for 2 seconds, and then he exclaimed,
Your words are exactly the same as Captain's previous comments, and even your expressions are very similar. She suspects that the key belongs to an older era, an era not of humans. Before the cataclysm, this world was still full of giants, dragons, elves, and demonic wolves. The shape of the key indirectly points to one of them.
Demonic wolves. Klein suddenly recalled the ravings he often heard during his past advancements. In it, the Phlegria, he heard, referred to the ancient god, Annihilation Demonic Wolf.
A treasure that involves the second epic?
He held back his curiosity and switched to calmly saying,
Write down everything the Admiral of Blood has done, including Klein Moretti and his men.
He remembered that Admiral of Blood and his pirate crew were the most notorious groups on the ocean. Their hands were stained with blood as they committed heinous sins.
How can I remember? They aren't beauties like Captain.
Danitz threw up his hands.
I can only list the most important things and some of the details that have left an impression on me. Wait, what do you want to do?
Bit by bit, Klein revealed a smile, one that gave Danitz a fright. Ho 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 ho. One the Sidburn virish imana jasi, is va ficas danimana and iverja. Ashoner bermina borles omayas, monsholuman mid.
If it's appropriate, I want to hunt him.
Chapter 520, Admiral of Blood.
Hunt them?
When he truly understood the meaning behind German Sparrow's words, he instantly became excited. He changed his seating posture and suppressed his voice.
Is there anything I can help you with?
As a qualified part-time pirate, he had nothing to do with beautiful words such as tolerance, compassion, and love. Since he had nearly died at the hands of Klein Moretti and now had the chance to take revenge, he definitely wouldn't miss it. He believed that he could survive in the pirate industry by relying on an accurate grasp of the situation, knowing when to resist, when to fight for his life, when to feign ignorance when seeing his enemies, and when to settle old scores. And now, this was an opportunity. Danitz still couldn't make an accurate judgment on how powerful German Sparrow was, but judging from how he had taken care of the fallen Bishop Millet within 10 seconds, it was unlikely that it would be too difficult for him to deal with Klein Moretti. Even if he encountered the Admiral of Blood, Senor, it wasn't impossible for him to win.
Of course, this is in a one-on-one situation, and pirates never talk about chivalry.
Klein leaned forward a little, placed his elbows on his knees, and clasped his hands.
I've told you.
Ah? What? Danitz felt that he was often unable to keep up with German Sparrow's train of thought. With regards to this, he could only console himself that a normal person and a madman were different. Seeing that the other party had stopped talking, he thought for a while and finally remembered what he had to do.
Write down everything that Admiral of Blood and his pirate crew had done? German Sparrow definitely wants to know how many things they've plundered.
Danitz quickly gathered his thoughts, rummaged around the room for a pen and paper, and scribbled a chunk of text. During this process, he was exceptionally glad that it was his left arm that was injured. When he was done writing, Klein reached out for it, read it carefully, and confirmed from the undetailed parts of Danitz's description that Admiral of Blood was the most typical and vile of pirates. Not only did they plunder, but they also abducted people, slaughtered crew members, and abused women.
A pirate like Danitz actually knows how to write ancient Fasak. He's also been educated.
After muttering to himself, Klein took out a copper penny and used divination to confirm the authenticity of the material. Then he said in a tone as though he was giving instructions on what was to be eaten tomorrow morning.
Tell me about the Admiral of Blood and his men.
He needs more detailed information. Is he preparing to hunt them?
Danitz was delighted, hating himself for not knowing enough.
Admiral of Blood's senior is suspected to be an evil spirit. Anyone who has encountered him has died a bizarre death. Either they strangle themselves to death, blow their mouths up, hug bombs, or slaughter their companions. Captain said that it's the possession of an evil spirit.
It's very similar to Miss Sharon's Beyond Her Powers. Wraith?
Klein didn't speak as he listened to Danitz go on in silence.
Senor can make a terrible shriek. The last time I fought them, I was nearly knocked unconscious and fell off the deck and into the sea. Heh. I returned the favor and set one of their boats on fire. Senor knows a lot of undead magic. Cruel, bloodthirsty, and full of desire. His targets can be either male or female, and even humanoid creatures.
Consistent with the unrestrained nature of the Rose School of Thought. Yes, accurately speaking, it's a trait of the prisoner pathway. The highest probability is that he's a wraith.
Klein nodded thoughtfully. In response, Danitz became more active and spoke a little faster.
Our captain thinks that Senor has a very powerful mystical item on him, one that makes him very lucky. He always seems to gain the favor of the gods. For example, at a critical moment, his opponent would suddenly slip or have their powers fail. Another example is winning 21 bets in a row.
A mystical item that can make someone lucky? This is very rare. It's from the monster pathway? Or is it connected to some other evil spirit?
Klein guessed, based on his own knowledge of mysticism.
I've never directly fought Senor, so that's all I know.
Danitz wanted to throw his hands up, but he was stopped by the pain in his left arm.
He has about 7 or 8 ships. His flagship is the Tree of Flesh and Blood. Heh, that's different from us. We mainly seek out treasure and wouldn't take in anyone, therefore we only have the Golden Dream.
It's no wonder the Admiral of Blood's bounty is much higher than Vice Admiral Iceberg, reaching 42,000 pounds. In terms of strength, he should be a bit stronger.
Klein immediately gained an understanding. He maintained the same posture as before, seemingly unaffected by the intelligence regarding the Admiral of Blood.
What about his subordinates?
Danitz
was long prepared, as he immediately said,
Senor has 10 of his strongest men under his command, the first, second, third mates of the flagship, and the captain of each ship. Klein Moretti is the second mate of the flagship. We think that he's a sequence 6. His body is like steel and is able to withstand bullets and cannonballs. He isn't afraid of fire, drowning, and various magic. He's strong and fast. He can rip his opponent apart, and he grasps a certain level of undead-related spells. He can summon zombies and rear puppets.
Zombie?
Klein immediately thought of Merrick, who played cards with zombies.
Based on the wraith traits of Admiral of Blood, Senor, can it be assumed that these pirates are actually part of the outer circle of the Rose School of Thought? Or perhaps they're from an organization used to make money. It's a pity that I don't have a messenger, nor did I ask Miss Sharon if she had one. Otherwise, I could contact her and confirm the Admiral of Blood's identity.
Klein guessed with some regret. He didn't give up just because this matter might involve the Rose School of Thought. In any case, he could change his face and identity afterwards. In addition, he had involved himself with the Aurora Order, the Demoness Sect, Rose Redemption, and Twilight Hermit Order, so he wasn't afraid of offending another entity.
Actually, it's not like I've never fought against the Rose School of Thought. I've already killed a wraith, a zombie, and a wraith, and I've robbed the Scarlet Lunar Corona and biological poison bottle.
Klein suddenly realized how much trouble he had been involved in.
It's unlikely that Moretti has any particularly powerful mystical items. Otherwise, I might not have been able to escape before. He has a bunch of puppets and zombies by his side, as well as several subordinates at sequence 7 or 8. As the second mate of the flagship, he should be the leader of the crew in the vicinity since he's here. We can consider hunting him first.
Below the high sequences, once the number of Beyonders reaches a certain amount, but qualitative change will occur. With the combination of different abilities, it's possible for a group to defeat a Beyonder stronger than themselves. It's just like how a Nighthawks team can definitely take down a Sequence 6 or even a Sequence 5.
Klein didn't underestimate Steel Moretti and his men just because he was stronger with creeping hunger. He was still as cautious as before.
I have to plan and prepare well. Well, the frequency bands and passcodes I receive from White Shark will come in handy, and once Miss Magician's radio transceiver is delivered, I'll get Danitz to frequently monitor the frequency and see if we can glean any information, allowing me to go in quickly to reap the harvest. And I can take advantage of this period to explore the possibility of true acting.
Soon, Klein formulated a plan as he continued to listen to Danitz tell him about the rest of Admiral of Blood's subordinates. After a while, when Danitz was finally done, he summarized enthusiastically,
If Steel Moretti can be killed, leaving my name behind, this matter will definitely go on the papers. Once it's spread, I no longer need to worry about informing Captain.
He was afraid that a traitor was among their ranks and that all the points of contact in the Rorstead archipelago were under the enemy's control. Therefore, he didn't dare to rashly make contact. He was still vexed over the problem of alerting his captain.
He actually has a brain.
Klein nodded and said,
You're in charge of gathering information on all aspects of steel.
All right.
Danitz replied with a grim smile, thinking of the punch that had nearly pierced his heart in the evening. Klein slowly stood up and walked towards the window. It was dark outside with howling winds and pouring rain. It looked as if the end of the world had arrived. Thinking of what he was going to do next, he couldn't help but feel like he was acting in a certain sense. Smiling, he muttered to himself in a low voice,
Tonight, Gehrman joins the hunt.
There have been rumors recently that Vice Admiral Iceberg received Death's Key. All the pirates in the Sonia Sea are roused by this. Investigate this matter.
He was an old man, with a head full of white hair, but he was still as energetic as ever. His speech was even faster than a young man's, as though he could charge out at any moment and personally resolve all problems. His body was strong, his muscles bulging with his bishop's robe. The wind howled around him as he breathed, and the air was moist.
There are similar rumors every year, but they all end up being fake. Such rumors are commonly spread across the sea. Even if it's true, I don't have the right to be involved. There's no need to take the risk. I'll just go through the motions and skirt the edge of this matter.
Alger muttered inwardly. He solemnly clenched his fist and struck his left breast.
Yes, Your Excellency. May the storm be with you.
Diocese Bishop Chogo was very pleased with Alger's attitude and returned the same salute.
May the storm be with you.
The encouraged Alger Wilson quickly left the cathedral and returned to the square outside. The storm last night had subsided, and only the scattered leaves and water puddles on the ground remained as evidence of its coming. After taking a breath of after-rain fresh air, Alger decided to visit the few places where pirates roamed. He planned to put on a show of working hard by trying to seek out information. If he were to meet a fellow with a bounty of a few £100s, he wouldn't mind apprehending the poor bastard. In his opinion, they were liquid cash flow that could be added to his savings.